Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're going to take a look at this Springbank 17-year-old cask strength, 52.3% ABV. Dustin, I turned you on to this bottle when I found it, and you were gracious enough to buy it. What can you tell us about it?
So we're doing a 17 year sherry wood, which is part of Springbank's wood collection, which seems to be a roughly annual release, which includes a Burgundy wood. I think this year is the Madeira wood. They've done a rum, bourbon, and this is the sherry, which is a mix of first, second, and I believe they do some re-char here as well. So they're kind of mixing in, and it's sherry butts and hogsheads. So knowing Springbank, I wouldn't be shocked if they just keep 10% of every cask they pour into something else.
I tell you what, this series always reminded me a lot of the Balvenie 17-year-old different wood series. You know, they had a peated cask, They had a Madeira cask, they had a new sherry Isla cask. Yeah. And they kind of did some different things. Interesting that they would both pick the 17-year time frame, but maybe that's just the perfect time for some of these whiskeys.
Could be. I think Japanese culture also has a big thing with the number 17.
I think you're right as far as that.
I've heard that a few times.
Yeah, I have heard that a few times. Rather than 18 and 15 or whatever.
Yeah. So maybe that's kind of an international thing. And we're looking at just over 9,000. I want to say 9,120 bottles. I don't know why they went the extra 120.
Yeah, but again, an obscure whiskey was something I always liked. So this is distilled in April of 1997, bottled in January of 2015. So it's been out a while.
Yeah, they've gotten hard to find. Although I picked this up not that long ago. No. And I've seen a few more of these show up here and there, so they're still somewhat in existence.
Yeah, there were a few floating around out there, and they're really reasonably priced compared to what normally Springbanks would be at 17 years old in cask strength. I mean, basically, they're the same price the normal 18 would be at 46%. So I always liken this as probably a better buy.
Yeah, it's actually cheaper in a lot of places, depending on where you're shopping. So
if you're more of a cask strength fan, this is definitely something you guys should check out. So Springbank, very artisan distillery, so you know it's natural color and unchill filtered.
Absolutely.
And again, this particular version is cask strength, so lovely presentation by the distillery. Dustin, what are you picking up on the nose?
First thing I get is actually strawberry bubblegum. It's a beautiful, just berries, bubblegum underlying it, vanillas, a little bit of peat, just a hint, touch of salt, again, just a hint, and then a little bit of, again, like some kind of a dough.
Yeah, well, for someone who isn't a hardcore Springbank fan, first thing you're picking up is that Springbank funk, for sure. That Springbank funkiness, but I tell you what, I'm right there with the vanilla and with the bubblegum note on it.
Okay, not quite getting the strawberry?
Not quite, maybe something red berry, but I don't know if I go all the way to strawberry on this one.
It's kind of gone away, but that first nose is just like, that is a freaking like candy straw. Not like a real one, not like you've just pulled it out of the fridge, but
yeah, to me it's just it's not sweet enough to be a strawberry. Strawberry is a fairly sweet fruit, and I'm just not getting a lot of sweetness here, but maybe that's that Springbank funkiness that always to me just dominates.
I'm actually not getting a lot of Springbank funk, so that's but again, I am a Springbank fanboy, so I've started to lose track of what that actually is.
Think Springbank 12 cask strength, any of the versions for the most part. That level of Springbank funkiness, it's absolutely here in this 2017.
Wow.
Unless you're a person that just drinks Springbank all day and it's just totally natural to you. I'm not that guy, so that's what I'm picking up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the peat and the brine are kind of the Springbank funk for me, and it's a unique peat and brine, and
buddy, it's all here.
And every time you do get a Springbank with sherry, it always brings some of that Springbank funk for sure.
Oh yeah, it feels like that distillery characteristic works so well with sherry, almost like Macallan. Like it almost needs sherry to really fully blossom and show you what it's got.
They love playing with that. It's just a beautiful combination.
Mm-hmm. What are you picking up on the palate, bud? As I say, the bubblegum note is right on.
So the showcase here on this one really is the finish, where I get this really nice salty pastry crust. Really nice there. And I mean, it's got a nice bit of sherry. Again, they're using a mixture of refill, second, hogsheads and sherry butts. So it's a big mixture of different, casks, all kind of just showing off, I guess, the spectrum of sherry wood. And so you're not getting a sherry bomb here, Mike. You're just getting a nice sherry overlay, a little more intense than, if you were to say a 12 where it's a mixture of bourbon and sherry.
I tell you what, it reminds me in terms of the level of sherry, kind of very similar with the Glendronach 15-year-old Revival does. You know, you would almost think like maybe there's some bourbon cask maturation in this, but obviously we know there's not. But yeah, very light sherry, probably some reused wood. It's far spicier on the palate than it was on the nose, so a lot of spices kind of kicking in. It's you still get that doughy bread note, you know, on the palate. I wouldn't quite go pie crust with it. It's not as dense as something like that. Yeah, and then the kind of maritime saltiness kind of comes in too. I mean, I tell you what, on the palate, it's a really nice experience.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really doing it's a Springbank, and now I'm actually getting more of that funk on here when I taste it versus the nose. The nose, I get that, but sometimes I struggle with, is that Springbank funk or is it sherry funk?
I think it's Springbank funk.
I think it's both, actually.
Yeah, aided by a little bit of second or third fill sherry cask would be my guess.
Yeah, I'd say there's a little bit of first fill, but probably not much in here.
Yeah, no, I'm not getting like overwhelming sherry notes. Like I said, you wouldn't, if you told me there was maybe a couple of bourbon casks in here, I wouldn't be shocked by it. Obviously, we know that's not the case, but again, just like Glendronach 15 Old Revival.
Yeah.
I almost felt like the sherry was light enough to where there could be some bourbon cask. Now it turns out there isn't.
Yep.
However, it's that light of sherry where you're picking up some of those finer bourbon notes. Not vanilla or pineapple, but just some of the lighter tropical fruits.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Mike, it is really spicy. I mean,
that on the palate, for
spicy,
sure.
And right when that spice hits, the Springbank peat comes in, and it's that, again, it's that maritime. It's not Isla. It is a funky, weird peat, which I love, of course.
Many do, and I tell you what, it's really worthy of having its own whiskey distillery region at this point, because it is so much different than really any other whiskey that you could try. And again, this isn't light peat. You know, I mean, this is pretty strong peat comparatively. You know, if you're used to Isla whiskeys, maybe you may not think that way, but if you're used to a Talisker or something lighter as far as a smoky whiskey or a Highland Park, this is going to be a heavily peated whiskey to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, it's spicy. Oak is really playing a nice role here.
Yeah, I mean,
I could believe this was an older whiskey as well.
I tell you what, it gives you a lot of the refined. There's a lot of parts of this that remind me of some of the Springbank 21s that we've had.
Yep.
Yeah, so it wouldn't shock me if you told me this was a 20-plus-year-old whiskey. And, you know, maybe some of the casks they use in it maybe are.
Very well could be. I don't believe they'd give us like a year or anything, which generally says, hey, no, they actually did tell when.
Well, they said it was distilled in 1997.
Yeah, so maybe not. But, boy, they've done something here where they're really getting a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
A lot of depth. I think they've really hit a home run here, Mike.
Especially with such a limited bottling. I mean, they really don't need to do that. But Springbank is really a great distillery as far as changing up small little things, even their core range, you know, bottlings that really keep you on your toes. And it's not just buying the same thing year after year.
Yeah, no, I mean, they give you great limited releases. And again, I think they're showcasing sherry finished whiskey in a very, nice package where this gives you elements of a first fill where, I mean, there is enough sherry here where you kind of get there, but you also get the elements of the refill. I'm willing to bet there's American and European oak here. There's got to be some European because it's spicy.
Yeah, well, it's definitely. I mean, I was thinking French oak.
Yeah, European French oak. Yeah,
yeah, the level of spice. Well, when you say European, it could be Spanish oak. I think most people kind of think Spanish oak when they think European oak. I may be wrong, at least I do. I think French oak is more rare, at least it appears to me. So in bottles that I think there are French oak, like say probably this or like Brookladdy, Black Art, or 15-year-old Glenlivet even. There's a certain level of spiciness. You're like, oh well, this is probably French oak.
Yeah, that definitely could be.
All right, Justin, where are you at as far as the whiskey score on this one?
I'm gonna go 89, Mike.
I'm going to go 88. I was thinking maybe 89 or so, but I think 88. I've had better Springbanks. I'm a huge fan of the 25, huge fan of the 21, as you know. I even like the 18, even though this is similar price to 18. I probably prefer the 18 over this.
Really?
Even at a lower ABV. I'd have to have them side by side.
I love this sherry finish. It's just really working for me.
Yeah, but still a solid whiskey. You know what I mean? Especially for what you paid for. I think you were under $200 on this, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, 170 shipped.
Yeah, so when we say 88, 89, something like that, it's well worth it.
That is a great price, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've looked to get a backup, and I've failed a couple times, so.
Plus, it's cask strength. You know what I mean? I mean, it's, for the price, it's definitely a solid whiskey.
Absolutely.
All right, so those are our thoughts on it. If you're lucky enough to be one of the people that got one of the 9,000 plus bottles in this one, let us know. Give us your thoughts on the whiskey, or if you're a Springbank fan, love to hear from you. Like to hear any comments you have in this section. And Dustin, until next time, what do we wish the folks?
Happy drinking.
See you then.